Hi, this is Ryan Bush with Pacific Reiki. Aside from our ordinary way of seeing, there are other kinds of seeing that can be extremely helpful as well, but aren't usually discussed in the system of Reiki. In this video, I'll give an overview of how we can work with three other types of seeing: dreams, visions, and what we could call inner sight, where we might see colors, swirls of light, or other patterns of energy. Some Reiki teachers can be rather dismissive of these other kinds of seeing, saying that we might see all kinds of things when practicing Reiki, or we shouldn't pay much attention to them or get caught up in them. Of course, it's important to not get distracted by any images that might come to us, or to get attached to whether we see these things or not. But as I'll discuss, these kinds of seeing can be extremely helpful in our Reiki practice, in our personal journey, and in our understanding of the world. First, let's talk about how our dreams can help us. As psychologists like Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud have shown, our dreams are far from random and can give us important clues about how we're doing at a subconscious level. However, dreams can also give us clues about what our energy is currently like and help deepen our connection with the Reiki space and our whole self. For example, one night I dreamed I was sitting at the bottom of the stairs that led down to the basement of my childhood home. I had my head in my hands, just sitting there in the dark, until I finally noticed that the door was open at the top of the stairs behind me, with light flooding in, and I could go back upstairs anytime I wanted to. For me, this dream is a powerful reminder of what it's like when we're at the lower level of functioning, whether we talk about the body, mind, or energy. When we're in that place, we may feel totally stuck, but we can raise our energy anytime we choose to, whether using the tools of Reiki or any other tradition, to re-enter the ordinary level of being, or raise it further to enter the Reiki space. As another example, while I was taking the Reiki 3A classes, I had a series of dreams involving gold. In one dream, I saw a tunnel leading up from the crown of my head. There was a round opening several feet above my head, and someone sent down a drop to me of what felt like living gold. It felt as precious as a newborn baby, and I knew I had to take good care of it. In another dream that week, the entire earth became covered in a layer of gold. These dreams felt like a clear confirmation to me that I was connecting with something beyond my ordinary self, whether we think of it as the higher self, Buddha self, Christ consciousness, soul, spirit, or any other name. Another time, I dreamed I saw a large black ramp curving up into the sky, starting from somewhere in the hills near Santa Cruz. I found the entrance to the ramp and joined a huge throng of people who were walking up the ramp. Eventually, we made our way to the top, where I was met by a tall blonde man that I felt I knew deeply. We entered a room where people were being called to meet with an authority figure, and when he called me, both the blonde man and I stepped forward. He gave us the choice of returning to the lower level that we came from by walking down a series of ramps where people wandered gradually back downwards, or else continuing on further in this upper world. The people who chose to return looked sad and lost, so we chose to continue onwards. I won't go through all the details of the dream here, but it felt like a clear example of how dreams can allow us to explore different levels of existence, whether we think of them as other parts of our own self or other levels of reality. There are many ways to work with our dreams, but the key point is that dreams may sometimes show or give clues about what our energy is currently like, how we can further develop, and what our whole self is like. The next kind of seeing could be called visions, although that term may be confusing or off-putting for some people. Basically, this includes images that come to us out of the blue and don't seem to be the product of our ordinary consciousness or the subconscious, because they may feel more real than real and may have a powerful numinous kind of feel. Some visions might happen while our eyes are open, but it seems more common for them to happen when our eyes are closed. Some people only think of visions as being when some kind of otherworldly figure appears to us, but I don't see any reason why the divine should be limited to only appearing in one kind of way. For example, one time when I was taking a bath, an image came to my mind out of the blue of a huge dancing Shiva statue emerging from the water of the boat harbor in Santa Cruz, near where a machine is dredging the channel to make it deeper and more open. Only the top tenth of the statue had emerged from the water, but that image kept coming back in the following years. Each time, more of the statue emerged from the water until it was completely out of the water, and basically seemed to indicate how the process of clearing was going and how much of my body could allow the Reiki energy to flow smoothly. Another time, while I was sitting at my desk doing work, it felt like someone opened a trapdoor several feet above my head, and a huge flood of golden light came down onto my head and washed through my body. I stayed with the experience for a few minutes, soaking in the light and love, before I was suddenly overcome by the urge to kneel down, clasp my hands together, and give thanks to the divine, even though I'd never done anything like that before. Then I laid down and raised my energy through a combination of deep breathing and focusing my attention above the crown of my head. Because my back was in pain, though, it was difficult to raise my energy enough, and an image came to me that I was moving slowly along the side of a superhighway, like I was on a skateboard or a bicycle, while other vehicles were zooming past. Then I sensed that someone on the highway slowed down to connect with me. I asked her if she would help carry me, and she agreed. We quickly accelerated, and the experience continued on from there. As another example, one night after I lay down to try to go to sleep, but long before I was actually asleep, I gradually started to feel lighter and lighter. Then an image came to me of many people rising along black threads up into the sky, like the silver cords that some people describe during out-of-body experiences. I rose up as well by raising my frequency, but stopped partway up to observe what I was seeing. Another night, this image came to me again, and I decided to keep going up as far as I could. Eventually, everyone's threads started converging on what looked like the sun, a huge blazing ball of light. Some of us were entering that ball of light, while others were leaving it, but it felt like a clear image of the oneness that we're all a part of, whether we call it the self, the source, the divine, God, Allah, the Tao, the Brahman, or any other name. These kinds of experiences made it clear to me that images that come to us out of the blue can be powerful indications of what our energy is currently like and opportunities to connect with other parts of our whole self. Another kind of seeing that's even less commonly understood are the colors, swirls, and patterns of light and darkness that could be called inner sight. These kinds of images can be seen either with eyes open or closed, most commonly happening when we're extremely calm and relaxed, but they can be so faint that they're extremely easy to miss if we aren't paying close attention. For example, during Reiki treatments and when receiving an attunement or Reiju, some people may see various colors when their eyes are closed, or swirls of light. I often see these kinds of swirls of light when I'm lying down or going to sleep, but notice they aren't random. If I direct my attention upwards and raise my frequency, such as with deep breathing, the swirls move in an upwards direction. While if I direct my attention downwards and ground myself, the swirls move downwards. More clues about this kind of seeing come when we're getting hands-on treatment of various kinds. When I'm getting a Reiki treatment, a massage, osteopathy, or craniosacral work, I often start to see patterns of light and darkness. At first, these patterns are barely perceptible and often look like a dense, knotted pattern of black shapes, or like what I call crumpled darkness. However, the shape of this dark pattern depends on what part of the body is being worked on. If someone's working on my shoulder, the darkness is in the shape of my shoulder when seen from the inside. If they're working on my right leg, the darkness has that shape. Furthermore, the pattern changes as work continues. Small chinks of light start to show through, and sometimes it abruptly shifts into a flood of brilliant light filling that entire part of my body. For me, though, the most fascinating example of inner sight is the circle of light that I start to see when my energy centers begin to come into alignment. At first, this circle might be extremely dark and a barely noticeable midnight blue, but the more open I am and the more aligned my spine is, the brighter the circle gets. Even more tellingly, the size of the circle changes based on where my energy is centered. If I focus my attention at the base of the spine, or at the hara, the circle is small, like the size of a quarter. While the farther up my spine I focus my attention, the bigger the circle gets. And if I raise my energy up above the crown of my head, the circle expands into a great bright light that fills my entire field of vision. Meanwhile, the color of the light changes depending on how open various energy centers are, sometimes appearing blue, white, gold, or like a glittering diamond. To summarize, all these ways of seeing can be extremely helpful, including dreams, visions, and inner sight. They are far from random or meaningless, as they can show us what our energy is currently like, how open and aligned our various energy centers are, and where our energy is centered. These images may not come to us all the time, but when they do, they can be clear indications of whether our energy is flowing smoothly or not, whether we're fully in the Reiki space, as well as helping us experience the great bright light for ourselves. These kinds of experiences are much more likely to happen when we're calm and relaxed, but as I mentioned, they can be easy to miss if we're not paying close attention. After all, these kinds of seeing are all part of the so-called subtle world. Another factor that may help these experiences happen is decalcifying the pineal gland, the tiny pea-sized gland at the top of the brainstem that's often associated with visionary experiences, but gets covered up by calcium deposits in 2/3 of adults due to things like fluoride in our water. I didn't have visions, inner sight, or powerful dreams until after I decalcified my pineal gland in 2014, so that seems to be one relevant factor. We know that the pineal gland has tiny magnetic crystals that could resonate in response to faint energetic signals, and it's connected to the optic nerve, so it may well act as a kind of radar, passing images to the brain even when our eyes are closed. Even if we've never experienced these other ways of seeing, there are many ways to connect with our energy and our whole self. For example, we can sense our energy directly, as we all know what it's like when we feel really awful if we're at the lower level of being due to physical pain, emotional pain, or other kinds of turmoil. And some of us may know what it's like to be at the higher level of being, if we've ever been in the Reiki space or deeply connected with soul in one way or another. But, as they say, seeing is believing. There's something special about seeing that can stay with us longer than what we might experience from other kinds of senses. People who haven't had these kinds of experiences may quickly dismiss them, saying that lots of weird things happen in dreams, and random images might come to us when we're awake. But anyone who's had them may find that they have a powerful impact. Especially if we have these kinds of experiences over and over, we may start to feel that there really is something beyond our ordinary self, whether we think of it as other levels of our own self or other levels of existence. Ultimately, we may come to feel that those really are the same thing. When we're connected with our higher self, we're also connected with a higher level of existence. And the same thing for when we end up at the lower level of being. When we're fully connected, there doesn't seem to be any separation at all between us and all the rest of existence. There's a lot more to say about all these kinds of seeing, including how to help these experiences happen, how to work with them as they're happening, and some possibilities of how to interpret them. So, for more information, see my workshops, classes, and books, or feel free to set up a one-on-one consultation. Regardless, I hope this overview is enough to help some people take these kinds of seeing more seriously. Peace, love, and blessings.